Today, we're looking at a purple ink by Pilot in their Iroshizuku line, Yama budo, or Crimson Glory Vine. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description, if you like purple inks, is a link to that playlist. Now, if you're new here, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. And if you're not, welcome back. Our first three writing samples are always done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Let's get straight into that first one, 90 GSM Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade a bit. Look at quick going darker to lighter to darker, and brown going darker to lighter, fox going darker to lighter, but jumps going lighter to darker. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it shades very well. Quick goes darker to lighter to darker, brown goes darker to lighter to darker, and 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby does show color variation, though the extra fine shows more, and it did show more in the writing. And the smear test, you could probably recover it if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with this Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, this Jinhao X450 with a medium, and this Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a fountain pen Revolution Muffed was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. Now, let's take a look at the second standard paper, 52 GSM, Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It is showing some shading, because you see the K in quick is a bit darker, but the and lazy is much darker than the rest of the sentence, and 10 seconds to dry. Now, medium is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 27 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the medium shows no color variation. We got none. The extra fine shows some, and we did get some. The smear test says you likely cannot recover it if you smear while you're writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this kind of grayish line really sticking around on the bottom, but the rest of this purpley magenta tone pushing its way up and really gathering at the top. Now, the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's dunked in the water, and you see that line on the bottom is much darker, much more there, really bonding with the paper in only 10 minutes, which does give you the idea that that could be some of a holdout color. The last standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have some shading. You look at how the is darker than the word over. In quick, the Q and the K are darker than the UIC. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, momenta. 1 moment of shading. Brown starts a little darker, gets a little bit lighter. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows for both a bit of color variation, not so much in the medium, but there wasn't so much here. More in the extra fine, which there was more, and the smear test says you could likely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Now, before we jump in and look at it, I'd like to be able to point out some of the gold sheen that shows up in the smear, but I don't ever see that show up in the writing, which is one of the reasons I prefer looking at writing over smears to get an idea for what a color will look like. Looking at the highlighter, the lowercase h has a bit of a blowout occurring. I'm super risk averse. That's enough for me to say I would not use it in a note-taking situation. Water is reactivating and lifting much of this ink. You see on the right side of the dot where we're getting ready to see the white of the paper come through, but we're seeing a little bit of holdout occurring. Now, pen flush is doing a bit more than water did, and on the left side of it, you see a spot of the gray still seeped into the paper that's not budging. Pen flush may be all it takes to get it off the paper. Water was all it took to get it out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution, you're not going to need it, but it does completely obliterate this ink. The additional writing samples are done on different papers from video to video, and in this one, we're going to take a look at Leuchtturm 1917 paper. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation, and the smear, the extra fine looks recoverable, but the medium does not. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Iroshizuku's Yama budo, or Crimson Glory Vine, has a viscosity of 1.8, making this a wet ink. The next writing sample is done in a composition notebook like you would have used in your science lab class. The only bleed spot that we see is at the scrubby, which isn't in itself a big deal. Other than that, we have no bleeding and no ghosting. The medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a tad lighter than the medium, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, moments of shading. Brown starts darker and gets lighter. Quick goes darker to lighter to darker. Not bad at all, 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby far left to far right does show some color variation, and we are getting some in the writing. And a smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Iroshizuku's Yama budo has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making this a bit faster drying than normal. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. I don't know that there's so much need to point out its bleeding spots or its ghosting. I'll say this, it's not touching the page underneath, but you can't use the back of the page, and I think that's enough there. The medium does have a little bit of feathering that's going on, tiny little feathers all over. It gives it a slight blurry look in person. It does have a little bit of spread, no halo sheen, no shade. I don't think this is horrible for on this paper. The extra fine is the same tone as the medium. It does have tiny feathering all over it, not so bad that people wouldn't use it. It does have some spread to about a fine. Again, not horrible. No halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby does show some color variation, but we don't get it. In a smear test, you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Iroshizuku's Yama budo, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a brown ink by Callifolio Havane. Now, if you're interested in other colors to look at for complements, then there's links to those playlists down in the description. So what do I think of Iroshizuku's Yama budo? This is a very magenta-leaning purple, or maybe it is a magenta after all. Regardless, I like the tone. There's some decent shading. It's very well behaved. And the color makes me think of the Joker's suit, which is always a good thing. I like that. I probably would have complemented with a brighter green. This is obviously a horrible penmanship day. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? All of them, unless you don't like an awesome color. I hope you got something out of this video, and tomorrow we're going to take a look at a video I've really been putting off for a long time, Lamy Blue.